Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner, and I'm here with an old friend of ours, RamV. How are you doing today, Ram?
Good. Good to be here, and thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's always good to have you back. Now, we're here to talk about the two collected editions of your latest collected editions of your recent Catwoman run,
Yeah.
Valley of the Shadow of Death and Fear State. Valley of the Shadow of Death is available to order from the links attached to this conversation, and Fear State is available for pre-order from the links attached to this conversation. You had a lengthy run on Catwoman. What was your time on the book like, and what can you tell me about these two different story arcs?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I came into Catwoman more by chance than by design, at least early on. It was my first interactions with Jamie Rich, who was the editor who first commissioned me to write stories for DC. He was on the book when Joel Jones was working on it, and he asked me to do in a couple of fill-in issues. So I did Catwoman 9, and then I did Catwoman 14 and 15. And then they seemed to be sort of really well appreciated by readers as well, and within the DC offices. So when Joelle called time on the book, and the book was taken over by its current editor, Jessica Chen. Jessica got in touch with me, and she said, "Hey, we've been looking at the previous issues and all the people who did runs before, and your issues seem to really be appreciated by everyone involved. Would you like to write the main run, if you will?" And so I said, "Yeah, I'll take on Catwoman." It scratches a very specific neo-noir, gritty, grounded crime aesthetic for me, which I had a blast with, writing all the issues that came after. Specifically with the two arcs, Valley of the Shadow of Death kind of focuses in on Selina's confrontation with a new villain that we designed for the run. His name is Father Valley, or Carl Valley, and he's an assassin who masquerades as a priest, with dubious links to the Order of Saint Dumas and the only other Valley that we know of in Gotham, which is Jean-Paul Valley, who's Azrael. And so it was interesting to place this character who is very clearly up to no good, but seems to have this kind of unflinching moral code, his own moral code, versus someone like a Selina who it's easy to assume she doesn't have a code. She doesn't have a morality. She's a thief. She'll do whatever it takes. But Selina has her own moral compass, and it's kind of interesting to pit those two characters, one unflinching, one ever adapting character, against each other. So that's what that arc was. And then Fear State hit, so all the Gotham books were embroiled in the events that were brought on by the magistrates' takeover, if you will. It came at an interesting time where the world seemed to be in the throes of protest against authoritarianism and police brutality in itself. So I think Catwoman presented me with this incidental canvas where I could put that struggle in and what that meant for me onto the page as well. It's still a superhero book. It's still a comic with lots of fun action stuff happening. But there's also stuff I'm trying to say in there about poverty and crime, and how they are not things to be stamped out. How the more we try to force poverty and crime out of our cities and our neighborhoods, the less human we become, the more authoritarian, the more unkind the approach becomes. There has to be a kinder way to do it.
I think that really does. I really get that sense of this particular piece of work of yours, and I think what's very interesting, to me has happened in maybe the last 10, 15 years, is that there's a new dimension of writing within the extended Batman universe that has appeared, because in real life, of course, multi-billionaires who are very kind of solipsistic and specific in their delivery have gone from being people who are widely lauded to people about whom everybody has a bunch of questions. So
Yeah.
it's not like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk are people that people are queuing around the block to clap their
Yeah,
hands
yeah.
and go, well done
None
for
of
being
those
so
guys are
rich.
putting on a costume and beating up bad guys at night, you know?
Right on, exactly, exactly. So I think in a way, you know, kind of the Bat universe and Gotham with its extremities, its cartoonish extremities, is a very interesting vehicle to explore some of those issues.
Yeah, I think so too. And you know, my brain goes to something from the recent Dune movie where when Paul Atreides looks at his father and he says, you know, I don't want this. I don't want to be the future of House Atreides. And Paul's father says, a great leader does not desire to lead. He is called to it. And I feel like that philosophy has to apply here. You know, a billionaire does not desire, should not desire to inflict change on society. In specifically in the case of Batman, he is called to it, and his being a billionaire and having all that money should technically have nothing to do with him being Batman. He would be Batman if he didn't have a single penny to his name. Yeah. And I think if as a writer, I would always maintain sight of that. But conflating money with good intentions has been a human endeavor for a very long time, which is why we had kings and monarchs, and which is why we have, you know, oligarchies and autocratic societies. So we have a long history of thinking rich people will save us, but hopefully this time around we learned that it won't. And as with everybody else, everyone needs to be kept in check. There needs to be mutual respect.
So true, and this is the very thing, that conflation of money and civic responsibility is one of the many things that fuels the crazy uber capitalism of the West, right? So whether it's here in the UK, whether it's in America, you know, the whole idea that what you've got to do above everything else is seek financial reward. It's kind of encoded in capitalist theorem, right? And it affects everybody. You know, I think, and again, you know, kind of what better sort of cartoonish microscope to use than what you've done.
I mean, to be honest, when I was asked to pitch this story, I was talking to my editors. I picked up a very specific example from Bombay's history, where there was essentially a crime lord, a slumlord in Bombay. His name was Vardaraj Mudliar, who was a South Indian, sort of, for the lack of a better term, a mafia boss from South Indian, who sort of established his fiefdom in the slums of Bombay. Except he did this very interesting thing where one of the largest slums in Bombay is a place called Dharavi. It's very notorious, very hard to navigate. You know, policemen don't like going in there, ambulances don't like going in there, so they don't get emergency services. You know, if there was a fire in the heart of Dharavi, people would be like, yeah, too bad, good luck to you. There's no way a fire truck is getting in there, you know? Except this guy came in and he said, okay, I'm going to use my wealth. I'm going to buy 15 ambulances that will run only inside the slum. So if anyone needs to get to a hospital, they don't call the actual government ambulance service. They will call these guys and they will drive you to a hospital. And so he worked outside of the system of the city and yet understood that he had to create some measure of benevolence for him to survive within that city. He had to still help people that enabled him in a lot of ways, and maybe it was selfishly driven, and crime is certainly not a thing that should pay, but I found something interesting in that approach as compared to an Elon Musk going like, I will save the world and I will charge you every single penny for it, and by the time you turn around and look, I will have made all of this wealth for what end, no one knows.
I think that's right. Or I'm Jeff Bezos and I'll build a big blue dick rocket. And
Yeah, yeah,
why
exactly.
don't you just invest in hospitals, mate? Please do that. I think it's a brilliant example. And before we leave Catwoman, on Fear State, of course, you had to tie in with one of these overarching company crossover narratives. As
Yeah,
a writer, what is that like to? I imagine it's quite challenging to get involved with that.
to an extent. I tend to think of, I tend to like to preserve the narrative purity of the book that I'm working on. I've done this twice, once with Suicide Squad and Swamp Thing, and now with a Gotham-wide event in Catwoman. I think the idea is to not lose sight of the story that you're telling anyway. And in terms of framework, think about how these greater events that happen outside of area of focus will impinge on things that are happening inside your story. And I think once you start thinking of it that way, the event becomes a new palette, a set of paints that you go like, okay, which of these add to the color of my story? Then I will use them. And if there are ones that don't fit in, then I'll just go, no, I can't, I don't want to use them because that affects the story that I've been telling since, issue 25. I think once you start looking at it that way, that's part of the joy of working in comics, right?
Yeah,
You've
right.
got all these like 50 other things happening everywhere, and you go like, oh, I can pick this shade of crimson from this book. I can pick blue from here, and I think I quite enjoy that. Is probably more evident in the Suicide Squad stuff I did with Swamp Thing, where people were like, Suicide Squad with Swamp Thing, that's not going to be good. And then people looked at it and they went, oh wait, he actually made it work. That was quite entertaining. And so I think comics always have the ability to surprise you like that. When my first experience of this was reading Sandman and going like, oh wait, there's Martian Manhunter in this, and John Constantine and Batman.
Yeah.
What's going on? And it all works. So I think it depends on your ability to insinuate these things into your stories.
I think that's very well said. I mean, I think it tests the creativity of the writer, of the artist. But if you're up to the task, I think it can yield benefits. And it's a very peculiarly comics industry, comics medium, mainstream comics medium related thing. The big crossover multi-character event. You don't really find it in any other kind of art form.
No, you don't.
And
I mean, I think also comic books genuinely are modern day mythologies. The only other place where you find multi-character crossover events are in actual proto-religious mythologies, like Norse gods fighting each other, or Ragnarok happening, or Greek gods, or Indian pantheon. So I do genuinely believe that comics are the modern day mythology that we're seeing being created in front of our eyes.
You know what? That is absolutely spot on, mate. You are literally standing on the shoulder of giants, and that's such an interesting way to put it that I completely agree with. And the two books that we've been talking about from RamV's Catwoman run, the both of those books are available from the links attached to this conversation, and they're really the perfect avocation of what you've just been saying. I think you must look back on the run and be very proud of it, actually, mate.
Yeah. I mean, I had a few influences and touchstones coming in terms of what I wanted to do with it. The Darwin Cook, Ed Brubaker run on Catwoman was very influential.
Yeah,
Tim Sale doing When in Rome was very influential, and that was the kind of run that I wanted to put together. And then looking back at the 16 or 20 odd issues I did, I do feel like I was able to infuse some of that joy into it.
Oh yeah, and I'm a huge fan of all the creators you just named, and it absolutely does. I think your run easily stands side by side with that material, and it's got a real enjoyable energy to it. And they're collected as Valley of the Shadow of the Death and Fear State, which anybody watching this conversation can again order from the links attached. Take care, brother. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, see you soon. Thank you.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.